So ever since I was in kindergarten, I joined Girl Scouts. I was a little daisy, and every year we got to go camping up in Mayapack. I grew up in New York, and we went camping in Mayapack, and it was a great time to be able to get together with just a ton of girls and be out in the outdoors. And it was a weekend of camping and canoeing and hiking, and just a beautiful place that really opened my eyes to being outside and being able to enjoy the environment and nature and get away from the city, because I grew up pretty close to New York City in a suburb of the Bronx, and we were still not the concrete jungle, but pretty close. And so being able to get out and go camping and exposed to different parks and being outside was really great. And I just fell in love with trees and the environment out there. So that exposure to being outside just really sparked my love of the environment, and I wanted to find new ways of getting involved. And when I was a senior in high school, we had this program called WISE, and WISE stood for Woodlands Individualized Senior Experience. And it was an opportunity for us to be able to pick our own internship and have formal presentations and just get to know potentially what we wanted to do when we were all grown up. And so I chose working at Cranberry Lake Nature Preserve, which was a nature preserve near where I grew up, and I did a project on vernal pools. And this was my introduction into water quality and understanding how macroinvertebrates are a good indicator of how good or poor water quality was. And that was also my introduction to amphibians. And ever since I got introduced to wood frogs and spotted salamanders, I was hooked. And I've just had a love and a passion for slimy creatures ever since then. So through my life, I've tried to combine my passions for trees and for amphibians the best way I could. This is a little back to my camping days, but one of the best things about going camping in Mayapack was the fall colors. And here in the Pacific Northwest, we've got some nice colors in the fall, but it's nothing to compare to the Northeast. Those are some amazing colors, and so you just get so awestruck about the beauty that's out there. And so when I went off to college, I majored in environmental science because I wasn't upstate New York, so I didn't really know what forestry was quite yet. But I had the pleasure of meeting some awesome people in school who were forestry majors and introduced me to what would become my real passion. And so environmental science was really fun and a great introduction to the overall environmental ecosystem and the concepts of sustainability. But really, when I was able to dive into the niche of forestry, I really fell in love and found my true track and decided that's what I wanted to do for the rest of my life. And so I was lucky enough to go to a school that had a program called Forestry Camp. And so it was an 8-week summer field program where me and other forestry students would go into the woods, and we'd stay in little shanty cabins and professors would come out to the woods and teach us about forestry. We did 3 weeks on ecology and 2 weeks on, and then 2 weeks on measuring trees, and then we did forest operations, forest management planning. We learned all about the fungi and the animals and the different tree species, and hiked all over the place and used all the tools and wrote our own management plans based on landowner objectives. So we were given a surprise landowner, and we were asked to write a management plan based on their objectives and what they wanted for the environment and for that land, and then use everything we learned to manage the land in that way. So it was a really great experience and introduction, and I just fell in love with it even more. After that, since I was hooked, I had to just get involved with forestry any way I could, and so I chose to do all my summer field programs in forestry. So I chose field jobs where I was working in forestry research, and I got to work for a research forest, Blodgett Research Forest, which is owned by University of California. And it was a great introduction to all the things that I might be able to do in the field, we learned how to inventory trees, and we learned how to, I pruned and I used GPS, and I looked at different insects and disease effects on trees, and I helped collect research on white pine blister us and whether trees grew better in or out of burn piles, and we helped collect data on a project they were doing there on group selections and on whether trees communicated with each other underground. So they were actually doing research to look at if a tree was planted next to a tree of the same species, if it would do better than if it was planted to a tree of a different species. And so if they're actually understanding who their neighbors are, which is really cool, and I think they actually did find some positive responses to that. And then I went to grad school, and this was my opportunity to be able to really combine that amphibian and tree love that I had. I did a project on northern red-legged frogs, and I went out and I surveyed wetlands, and I got in my waders and I walked around wetlands surveying for egg masses for all sorts of amphibian species. And I looked at how forestry cover in the area affected their populations, because northern red-legged frogs are a really terrestrial species, and they migrate far distances, and they need forests for most of their life. They only use wetlands really to breed. And so if there's not enough forest around, then there's the potential for them not to be able to have as high populations. And so that's what my master's research was, and it was really fun to be able to actually bring that work around again from what ignited my passion to go into environmental science when I went to college, back around to the amphibians, and really solidify my track in the forestry world after I graduated from graduate school. Currently, I'm an extension agent with Oregon State University, and I am an assistant professor of practice, which means in the College of Forestry, which means that I do community outreach and education for landowners, the public, and natural resource professionals. And I got into, well, obviously I love forestry, and so that was the first part of it, but also I really love helping people and teaching. My mom was a religious teacher, and I would go help her on the weekends, and so I just always loved the connection that my mom had with kids and with people and teaching them things, that it just sort of got instilled in me as something that was a really great way to share what you love. And so I got into extension because I wanted to share with people the things that I love, and wanted them to be able to be empowered to be able to do do things and make decisions on the land that they cared so much about. And so that's why I got into extension, and I really love it, and it's just a great opportunity to really become embedded in the community and share my passion with people, and just see them so excited when they are able to look at their property and envision what their values and what their interests are for making that property amazing in their little slice of heaven, and then have it get accomplished. So being a woman who knows the woods is pretty empowering. I love the opportunity to be able to just go out for a hike whenever I want to and not be worried about getting lost, or be worried about, you know, what to do in an emergency, because I'm prepared and I understand the environment, and I make plans about getting in and out, and it's also really empowering to be able to look around and know what I'm looking at, and look at how the ecosystem is working, and understand a lot of how the water and the trees and the animals and even the soil and the ground are all interacting to make this whole ecosystem work. And I was going to say, and one of the other great things about knowing the woods is that part of that lifestyle of survival is really empowering as well. I get to go out and I can recreate in the woods, and I can eat in the woods. I know which berries are edible. I know which mushrooms are edible. And so there's just a really great connection there that helps me be able to enjoy and live off the passion that I have as well.